Hey, what's going on, everyone? Sparks here. So with DE10 having come and gone, and I've gotten it completed, I figured I'd just make a quick video going over all my stages so far, who I have in them, and sort of if there's any worth in removing anyone just for any future tiers. So with that, let's begin. So we've got tier 1, we've got 2 of 3 Tidus, we've got 3 of 3 Agrius, and 1 of 3 Lilithset. I think this was like the second or third team that I ended up using to perfect this stage. I initially was trying to go super budget in here with like Ramza and Null, but I was having way too much trouble with the bombs, so I figured I may as well just leave some people in here who probably won't be upgraded for a while. Tidus hasn't been revealed to have an LD yet, and that's so far in the future that it kind of doesn't matter. Agrius, she's still good at 3 of 3, but for recent stages, she's definitely having trouble with her EX recast speed, and the fact that her best shaving move is her skill 2, which is pretty valuable. And then Lilithset, she does have uses in higher stages because she provides a lot of debuffs and overall helps the party. But I managed to get Yuffie EX in all the free pulls recently, so if anything, I have an option there. So more than likely, no one's going to be removed from this stage. Tier 2, we have 3 of 3 Ace, 3 of 3 Celeste, and Charlotta, who cannot be currently realized. This is the same sort of deal. I don't think anyone here will necessarily be removed anytime soon. Celeste is still pretty good, especially at 3 of 3, so she might have a use in a magic-centric stage, but I don't really think I feel like moving her out unless the situation provides. I do have other magic options, but honestly, like leaving this stage as is going to be, I think it's going to be efficient enough. Of course, it should be noted that because the first 5 DE stages all launched at the same time in early chaos, comparatively, some of them might have pretty budget teams or just teams with strange amounts of investment just because it felt easier to leave people there. See, I say that, and yet we reached tier 3, which I've redone 3 or 4 times to get some other units that I chose to invest in into here to get some other ones out. Initially, I had, I believe it was Ultimecia, Sarah, and Setzer, or maybe Lilithset in here. But now, as you can see, it has, I believe it's 1 of 3 Vanille. Yeah, 1 of 3 Vanille, 3 of 3 Bosch, and 2 of 3 Yuri. Vanille was there to handle the debuffs and to keep enemy damage on the lower side. Bosch handled HP damage, and Yuri handled HP regen. So overall, I think that tier ended up pretty fine. Tier 4, this one I actually redid recently. It used to have 3 of 3 Cloud, 3 of 3 Ishtala, and Lena, who cannot currently be realized. But I figured that because Lena EX Plus is coming up soon, and Ishtala EX being as strong as it is, it felt more reasonable to try and get them out of the stage so I can use them in future tiers. So I replaced them with 3 of 3 Tifa and 0 of 3 Kate Sith. It ended up pretty okay. I actually needed to stall near the end because I needed to regen, and Kate Sith's regen isn't very high. But thankfully, with both Tifa and Cloud having launch capability, it kept my score up pretty high. And as you can see, I actually wasn't close to the turn limit at all. I was just a little bit scared on whether or not I'd be able to survive long enough. I don't see anyone being removed out of here until Cloud Burst arrives, but even then, that's so far in the future that it's just going to get so much easier to do these initial tiers. Tier 5, we have 3 of 3 Locke, 3 of 3 Ferris, and Leon, who cannot currently be realized. Leon and... Well, okay, I should say it like this. Leon, with his EX effects, turned the whole team into absorbing tanks, so they didn't take any brave damage because I believe the only elemental hits in that stage were Lightning using Spark Strike and then Onion Knight using Blizzard. Locke was my healer, and then Ferris was my Dispeller and Debuffer. Ferris might have a use in a later stage, but as I mentioned, for Tier 1, I do have Yuffie. So if anything, I might just like swap them out and then use Ferris somewhere else up higher. I don't know. Probably to move someone else. If it comes to it, it comes to it. T6. So at this point, we have Dimensions End stages that are slowly being released and are kind of catered towards the units who are released around them. So here we have 3 of 3 Emperor, 3 of 3 Rosa, and at the time that I cleared it, Selphie did not have her realization, so she did not provide HP regen, or HP healing off EX cast. Thanks to Selphie's aura buff, which increases EX recast speed, it made it a bit easier to conserve skill uses on both Emperor and Rosa. I don't think anyone here is going to be removed. It would be nice, I suppose, to get Rosa out of there, but I think she's okay there because it's pretty value along with Selphie, who was there at the time. Selphie also provided debuff immunity, which is pretty valuable in and of itself. Well, no, okay, that was the wrong thing to say. It's not immunity, it's like 70 or 80%, which would be useful, which is generally useful, but again, I have Lena available, and then I plan on pulling on Aphmau, who also has debuff immunity for the party, so that'll be for the future when it arrives. Tier 7, we have 3 of 3 Zac, 3 of 3 Noctis, and I believe 0 of 3 Ignis? Yeah, 0 of 3 Ignis. Ignis provides debuff immunity. Zac is probably the main one who feels like a hard invest for this stage, just because Zac's so incredibly strong, but I figured I may as well use him. And then Noctis is about in the same scenario. Because his EX Plus arrived early, and I also pulled on Aranea, they're both 3 of 3, but I initially was thinking, am I going to need Aranea here? Thankfully, I didn't, so she's actually still waiting to be used for any future stage that needs her, which is definitely an interesting proposition, considering that Japan did not have her at this time, so she's definitely overpowered, so she's effectively not really needed for Dimension's End, if possible. Like I said, Zac is probably going to stay in this stage. I don't mind keeping him there just because I have Galoof, even though he's already been used. I want to try and get Snow. We'll see how that goes. And then Noctis likely isn't going to be moved anywhere until his Burst and LD arrive. Tier 8, we have 3 of 3 Ultimecia, 3 of 3 Onion Knight, and 0 of 3 Rem. This fight was incredibly painful, but honestly, I'm glad that I have who I have in there because it feels fairly efficient. I do have Lulu, but it doesn't feel worth it to remove probably Onion Knight for remove Onion Knight for Lulu, because then I would need to consider a more damaging support than Rem. Yeah, honestly, I pulled on Lulu thinking that I would need her for this tier, but then I got it done after like 2.5 to 3 hours of resets, so whatever, I suppose. Likely no one's going to be moved from this tier. Ultimecia does get LD in the future, but because it's relatively early in the Burst and LD era, I think it's not necessarily going to be a better idea to move her up. Tier 9, we have 3 of 3 Paladin Cecil, 1 of 3 Galoof, and 3 of 3 Beatrix. This tier initially had 2 of 3 Paladin Cecil, I think 2 of 3 Pinello, and 3 of 3 Vayne, but I figured it'd be wiser to get Pinello as a pure support out of that tier as well as Vayne. So I don't necessarily mind leaving any of these units here, especially Galoof, because I could invest into a Galoof solo, but I don't really see the value in any of those other possible tiers that he can be used to solo, any of those possible units in like a higher tier. Paladin Cecil is pretty value, as is Beatrix, but with the amount of supports that are coming soon, I think it's okay. And then we have tier 10. We have 3 of 3 Shadow, 3 of 3 Sarah with Perfect Arts, and 1 of 3 Hope. This I think is pretty okay. I initially was thinking that I want to use like Vayne or Lightning or Leo here, but I kind of rushed into investing Shadow, and I mean he's pretty good because I think 2 or 3 or maybe even all of his moves ignore defense. So even when the Bahamut and the Dragons increase their defense, he's still doing for pretty good hits. And then he gets good battery from Sarah and Hope. Hope helps mitigate damage throughout the whole stage and is the only source of healing. So how close did I get to it? Yeah, 105 turns and the limit is 110. And as you can see, my damage, I was, what is that, 770 HP off, so that's like 1 extra turn of regen. Thankfully, Shadow with his additional ability gets 100% regen, so that helped out on, I believe, the end balls and the and the Mega Flares from Bahamut to help mitigate the HP damage, as well as Hope's additional ability as well. So could anyone in this tier be moved? I mean, possibly Hope, but I'm not sure what support I'd replace him with. Having a debuffer or dispeller is pretty good for this stage because the Bahamut and the dragons give themselves a lot of buffs, so Sarah was good for that. And then, yeah, Shadow with his evade and his defense ignoring attacks made sure that he was still doing really good damage, as well as pretty decent longevity with how many skill uses he has. So, yeah, at this time, I think I've moved everyone out that I feel I would need. Of course, that might change depending on who I end up pulling in the future, who I get lucky. But, yeah, that's about where my Dimensions End is set right now. Hope everyone's doing good, and if you're struggling with any stages, good luck to you. Alright, thanks for watching.